Hello, incoming fifth graders. Back with the first rule of punk. And where we left off, Malou had sort of this awkward conversation with her father. And the last sentence from last week, I wondered if Dad secretly felt like I'd forgotten all about him. When I walked into Kalaka, Joe was at the counter bent over a notebook. Ellie and Benny weren't there yet. I waved to Joe and found a table where I pulled out my zine supplies. "What's that?" Joe asked when he came over. He nudged his chin towards the zine I was working on. "It's a zine," I said, closing the cover of my book over it. "What's a zine? Can I see it?" "Maybe when it's finished," I told him all about zines and how to make them. "Sounds cool," he said. "Are there like comic zines?" "Yeah, of course," I said. "Maybe I'll make one too then," he said. "Been working on a story." He tapped a sketch pad. "What's it about?" "A family of Mexican vampires," he said and hissed. "They've got to figure out how to keep a tan and avoid the sun at the same time. But it's like the 1800s, so there are no tanning beds. Chew on that." "Like I said before, you're weird," I replied and laughed. "But get this, instead of garlic, you should make their weakness cilantro." "Good idea," Joe said. "I'm using that." He flipped open his sketch pad and wrote something down. "You want your usual?" I nodded. "One cafe au lait and one concha coming up." Joe picked up his sketch pad and headed back behind the counter. Through the window, I could see Ellie climb out of a car and wave to a red-headed woman in the driver's seat. When she arrived at our table, she dropped her heavy backpack on the floor. "What's in there?" I asked. "A ton of bricks?" "Close," Ellie said. "These are all the books I need for the essay and test I have this week." "Was that your mom, the woman in the car?" Ellie nodded. "Couldn't you tell?" "Yeah," I said and laughed. "Do you live nearby?" "Not really," Ellie said, "but I've been at Posada since kindergarten. My parents applied because it has a curriculum that will prepare me to complete a high school IB program, which will look great on a college application," I finished for her. "Exactly," Ellie grinned. "They also want me to be in a school where I can easily learn a second language. It's worth being an outsider to get a good education." "You're not an outsider," I said, and I realized I didn't know much about Ellie outside of the band and her school interests. "My mom says it builds character," Ellie said with a shrug. "That it's good to know what it feels like not to be the norm." "Girl, that's harsh." Joe placed a plate of conchas in the middle of the table just as Benny came in and made a beeline for our table. "What's harsh?" Benny asked, grabbing a concha. "Forget it," Joe said. "Check this out." He sat down and flipped through his sketch pad until he found the page he was looking for. He held it out for us to see. "Thinking we should make t-shirts." We all leaned in to get a better look. On the page was a drawing of 4 coconuts, real coconuts, wearing mariachi hats. Above the coconuts was the band's name written over an 80s-looking checkered pattern. "This is awesome," I said. "What about a motto or a mission statement on the back, too?" Ellie said. "Something like, not your abuela's ranchera," I said. "How about not your abuela's music," said Joe, "in case we decide to branch out." "Or spreading Mexican culture loudly," Ellie added. We laughed. "And we should give one to Principal Rivera after the show," Benny said. We argued over colors, mission statements, and eco-friendly t-shirt vendors. Then we asked Mrs. Hidalgo if Calafa Coffee would want to sponsor the shirts. And for a little while, I was able to forget about my conversation with Dad and about eventually having to tell Mom about the band. It was the happiest I'd felt since we moved to Chicago. Chapter 28. "What do you think?" Joe asked. We were in the library after school, where I flipped through a book I'd pulled from the display shelf while he finished the flyer for our talent show. "Looks great," I said. "Did you check with Mr. Baca about the copier?" "Yeah, no problem," he said. "I'll make the copies now." "Cool," I said. "We can hand them out on Monday." "We should probably do it off school grounds just in case, maybe by the bus stop." Joe nodded and looked over the flyer again. "And no color paper," he added. "We don't want to be too noticeable." "Yes, Your Highness," Joe said, bowing dramatically. "What you reading there?" I closed the book and held it up for Joe. I'd pulled a book from Mr. Baca's display about Jose Guadalupe Posada, the guy our school was named after, and who our school was celebrating at the fall fiesta. "He was a pretty interesting guy," I say. "I think I'm going to check this out before Mr. Baca closes up. I'll come by Kalaka this weekend to grab some flyers." Later, as I shoved the book into my bag, I found the balled-up flyer Selena had thrown away at her mom's dance studio. I pulled it out. The deadline to register for the dance class had passed. I wondered if Selena was still upset about it. Was she mad at her mom for not letting her do it? I didn't know why I even kept the flyer, or why, as much as Selena bugged me, I felt a little bad for her. On Monday morning, the 4 of us met early to give out as many flyers as we could. We hung out near the bus stop at the end of the curb where we wouldn't be noticed by school staff patrolling. It's the same corner where there's a little market, perfect for buying bottles of orange juice and rolls de canela, that means cinnamon rolls. They're packaged in bright pink wrappers featuring a white bear wearing a baker's hat. All done, Ellie said. I think that went well, buddy. Benny laughed, pointing to a kid throwing the flyer in the trash can. Great, I said. Hey, that's my hard work, Joe complained. Whatever. At least I know a couple of kids who are interested. Really, I asked. Yeah, I said. Rivera gave them the axe because their entire comedy act consisted of fart and bathroom jokes. Selena and I had a routine now that consisted of ignoring each other at first, making faces from across the aisle, and eventually trading smart aleck remarks. So it was no surprise when she leaned toward me to say something. I know what you're up to, Maria Luisa, she whispered cryptically. What are you talking about, I asked, trying not to sound nervous. We had strategically planned our flyer distribution to not only avoid teachers and staff, but also to avoid Selena. I knew Selena always arrived at school just as the bell rang and would come in through the front door instead of around the back, where everyone was supposed to enter. We also hadn't put any of our names on the flyer, just the date, time, location, and invitation for kids to participate. You know what I'm talking about, she said. No, I don't, I said, fiddling with the cap on my water bottle. I know about your talent show plan. She pulled a sheet of paper out of her folder and placed it on the desk where I could see it. It was the flyer Joe had made. Not a copy of the flyer, but the original he'd photocopied in the library. He left it on the copier. Teachers do that a lot, too. Where did you get that, I asked before I could stop myself. I found it in Mr. Baca's copier, right where he left it. All that candy necklace sugar is affecting your brain, I said. She had no proof it was mine, after all. I've never used Mr. Baca's copier. You didn't, but Joe did. Mr. Baca and Joe must have forgotten it when I found it in the copier, she went on. I offered to return it to him. She gave me a smug smile. So what, I asked. We aren't doing anything wrong. Then why are you being so sneaky, she asked. Why do you care so much? Just give it to me. No way, she said, putting the paper back in her folder. I'll hold on to it. Selena turned to her friend, letting me know we were done talking. I imagined pouring my bottle of water on her and watching her melt like the Wicked Witch of the West until there was nothing but a pile of clothes and a candy necklace. I spent the morning distracted, wondering what Selena planned to do with the flyer, and then, just before lunch, I found out. The PA in my science classroom crackled to life. Ms. Friedman, can you please send Maria Luisa to the office? The whole class looked up from their microscopes where we were studying plant cells and faced me. Go on, Miss Friedman said, take your things. When I walked into the front office, Mrs. Soto, the school secretary, looked up. Maria Luisa? I nodded. I didn't even bother correcting her because I was so nervous. Principal Rivera would like to see you, she said. Come on back. Her office is in the end of the hallway. I walked through the little swinging door that separated the offices from the waiting area and headed down the hall. I'd never been inside a principal's office. All the while I thought about how in Ramona Quimby, age 8, Beezus told Ramona that she could remember the correct way to spell principal by remembering that the school principal was her pal. Because principal ends in P-A-L. It's kind of uncommon. Principal Rivera was staring at her computer screen when I walked up to her door. Maria Luisa, she said when she noticed me, come in, have a seat. I sat down at one of the chairs in front of her super neat desk. Notepad stacked to her right, a manila folder in front of her, a calendar to the left. There was a fancy nameplate that read, Principal L. Rivera, right in front of me. I wondered what the L stood for. Is something wrong? I asked, sitting on the edge of the chair. Tell me, Principal Rivera placed her hands on top of the manila folder and waited. I stood up and did the fingertip test on my dress, hoping it was that. Your dress is fine, she said, and opened the folder. Maria Luisa, it's come to my attention that you and your friends are planning to disrupt the fall fiesta. Disrupt the fall fiesta, I asked. That's not true. I really was surprised to hear that. The plan was never to disrupt fall fiesta with our talent show. We just wanted to be part of it without being judged. Principal Rivera opened the folder and slid a piece of paper towards me. I didn't have to look at it to know what it was. It was the original flyer Joe had made. Can you explain this? I stared at the flyer and tried to think of what to say, but nothing that wasn't a flat-out lie or the entire angry and uncensored truth came to mind. So I didn't say anything. Maria Luisa, this is a warning. If you and your friends disrupt Fall Fiesta, there will be consequences. She looked at my face, searching for my line of vision, but I just stared at the flyer. You've been doing very well here so far, but this won't be tolerated. Do you understand? I nodded. Good, she said, and glanced at the clock on the wall next to her. Is this your lunch period? Yes, I said. Mine too, she smiled as she pulled out a lunch bag from her drawer. Go on to the cafeteria. I got up and grabbed my bag. Fall Fiesta is a long-standing Posada tradition, and it's a lot of fun, Principal Rivera said. I hope you enjoy it, Maria Luisa. Yeah, as long as my skirt was long enough and my talent show performance was traditional. As I walked toward the cafeteria, I felt angry at everyone. Joe for leaving the flyer in the copier, Selena for being such a busybody and giving the flyer to Principal Rivera, Principal Rivera for not letting us perform, or Mom for bringing me to this place. Chapter 29. I let my tray smack hard against the lunch table before sitting down. Dad says if something is bothering me, I should just say it, but I was too angry to know what to say, and it felt good to let the tray hit the table. Whoa, easy there, Joe said. I gave him the evil eye and chewed angrily on a sporkful of salad. You look mad, Benny said. What's up? I heard you got called into Principal Rivera's office, Ellie said, tearing her spork and napkin packet open. I did get called in to see her, I said, and I'm definitely mad. Are you going to tell us why? Are you going to take it out on that salad? Benny asked, giving my salad a sympathetic look. Did you happen to notice you're missing something? I asked Joe, putting down my spork. Benny looked between us. Should we leave? He asked. What are you talking about, girl? Joe asked, looking genuinely confused. Yeah, what's he missing? Ellie asked. You left the original flyer, Mr. Baca's copier, dummy, I said. Oh, sorry, man. Joe gave me an apologetic grin before taking a sip of his chocolate milk. I couldn't find it, but I thought it just got mixed up with the copies or something. Well, guess who found it? I said. Why don't you just say what you have to say? Joe asked. What happened? I told him the whole story, then sat back with my arms crossed, scowling at Joe. So what? Principal Rivera knows, Joe said. What's the problem? Didn't you hear what I just said? There will be consequences if we do this. Who knew you were such a quitter, Maria Luisa? Joe said, shaking his head. I'm not a quitter. You messed up the whole plan, Jose. How could you be so careless? If Principal Rivera thinks we're disrupting the fall fiesta, we could get detention forever, or worse. Joe's face started to get red. Wow, Maria Luisa, he said. You're the one who runs around talking about being punk. What now? Well, you didn't have to talk to the principal, I said. And your mom would probably support you if you got in trouble. I messed up, Joe said, and I said I was sorry. Well, sorry isn't going to fix this, I said. Maybe you should just tell your... Ellie started before Joe cut her off. You know what? That's cool, because I'm done with this band thing, Joe said. You started this, you picked the song, you decided what we were all going to do. I guess you get to call it quits. Joe stood and picked up his tray. Later, Ellie, later, Benny, he said, ignoring me. Wait, Ellie said, what just happened here? Yeah, is he for real, Benny asked. I couldn't answer because I didn't know what had just happened. I let a soggy piece of iceberg lettuce drop from the spork. The bell rang and we gathered our trays. Can you believe him? I asked, banging my tray on the side of the garbage can so hard one of the lunch ladies glared at me. Malu, you were kind of hard on him, Ellie said. Maybe if you talk to him, you two can figure it out. Yeah, Benny nodded. Fall Fiesta's next weekend, and we've been working so hard to get ready for this plan that you came up with, so let's do it. What do you want me to do? I asked. If Joe wants to quit, then I guess we're done. Just apologize and let's move on, Ellie said. Me? I couldn't believe Ellie. He's the one who left the flyer for Selena to find. You heard him, Benny said. It was an accident. I wanted to get far away from Ellie and Benny, but they blocked my way, waiting for me to say something. I see projects to the end, Malu, Ellie said. She had an intense look on her face. I even stopped working on my next petition to do this. You can't let this happen. Yeah, what about us? Benny asked. I passed up a chance to play with the band kids because you needed help for the Cocos. And what about all those flyers we gave out? Ellie asked. There are other kids who were left out of the talent show who may be counting on the Alterna Fiesta show. I waited for them to move, completely annoyed. Finally, Benny did, and I walked away. But I could barely see where I was going because my eyes were starting to well up with tears. Were the Cocos really done? All right. See you next week for Chapter 30. Whoever's out there, thanks for listening, and have a great week. Bye!